Take a moment and think about the last thing you threw away. Maybe it was a plastic bottle, a food container, or a shopping bag. You probably didn't think much about it. You used it, you were done with it, and you moved on. But that piece of plastic didn't really go anywhere. It didn't disappear, it just changed location. That's the core of the problem. Plastic doesn't go away in the way most people imagine. It doesn't break down into harmless natural material like paper or food waste. Instead, it stays in the environment, often for hundreds of years, slowly changing form but never truly leaving. To understand why, we need to look at what plastic actually is. Plastic is made from synthetic polymers, which are long chains of molecules usually derived from fossil fuels like oil and natural gas. These chains are designed to be strong, flexible, and resistant to natural processes. That's what makes plastic so useful. It's lightweight, durable, and cheap to produce. But those same qualities are exactly what make it so difficult to get rid of. In nature, materials like wood, leaves, and food scraps break down through biological processes. Microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi can digest them and return them to the ecosystem. Plastic, however, is not something these organisms evolved to handle. As a result, it doesn't biodegrade in the same way. Instead of being broken down into natural components, plastic undergoes a much slower process called photodegradation. Photodegradation happens when sunlight, especially ultraviolet radiation, weakens the chemical bonds in plastic. Over time, this causes larger pieces of plastic to fragment into smaller and smaller pieces. But this is where a common misunderstanding comes in. When plastic breaks into smaller pieces, it hasn't disappeared, it has simply become less visible. These tiny fragments are known as microplastics, usually defined as pieces smaller than 5 millimeters. There are even smaller ones called nanoplastics, which are so tiny that they are difficult to detect without specialized equipment. These particles spread easily through air, water, and soil, and they are almost impossible to remove once they are widely dispersed. Microplastics have now been found in oceans, rivers, lakes, and even in remote areas far from human activity. They've been detected in seafood, drinking water, and various food products. Studies have also found microplastics inside the human body, including in blood and lung tissue. While research is still ongoing, there is growing concern about the long-term health effects of these particles. One reason plastic spreads so widely is the way it moves through natural systems. A plastic bottle thrown away in one city can travel through drainage systems into rivers, then into the ocean. From there, ocean currents can carry it across vast distances. Along the way, it breaks into smaller pieces, which can be ingested by marine life. Fish, birds, and other animals often mistake plastic for food, leading to internal injuries, starvation, or exposure to toxic substances. But the issue is not limited to oceans. On land, plastic waste accumulates in landfills where it can take centuries to degrade. Some of it is burned, which reduces volume but releases harmful gases into the atmosphere. Some of it is recycled, but recycling has its own limitations. Many people believe that recycling is the main solution to plastic pollution, but the reality is more complicated. Not all plastics are recyclable, and even those that are can only be recycled a limited number of times before their quality degrades. In addition, recycling systems vary widely between regions, and a significant portion of plastic waste is never properly processed. In fact, a large percentage of plastic waste ends up in landfills or the natural environment despite recycling efforts. Contamination is another issue. When different types of plastic are mixed together or when food residue is present, it can make recycling more difficult or even impossible. As a result, recycling alone cannot solve the problem. Another factor to consider is the scale of plastic production. Global plastic production has increased dramatically over the past few decades, reaching hundreds of millions of tons per year. Much of this plastic is designed for single use, meaning it is used briefly and then discarded. This creates a constant flow of new plastic entering the environment faster than it can be managed or contained. At the same time, plastic is deeply integrated into modern life. It is used in packaging, electronics, transportation, healthcare, and many other industries. This makes it unrealistic to eliminate plastic entirely.
The goal then is not to remove plastic from society overnight, but to better understand how it behaves and how we can reduce its impact. Individual behavior plays a role in this system, even if it may seem small at first. Everyday choices such as using disposable bottles, ordering takeaway food, or accepting plastic bags contribute to overall demand. When millions of people make similar choices, the cumulative effect is significant. However, it is also important to approach this realistically. Expecting individuals to completely avoid plastic is not practical in most situations. Instead, the focus should be on reducing unnecessary use and making more deliberate choices where possible. For example, using a reusable water bottle can reduce the need for single-use plastic bottles. Bringing a reusable bag when shopping can cut down on plastic bag consumption. Choosing products with less packaging or more sustainable materials can also make a difference over time. These actions are not perfect solutions, but they help reduce the total amount of plastic entering the system. It is also worth recognizing that systemic change is necessary. This includes improvements in product design, waste management infrastructure, and policy decisions. Companies can develop materials that are easier to recycle or that break down more safely. Governments can implement regulations that limit certain types of plastic or encourage better waste handling practices. These larger changes, combined with individual behavior, can create more meaningful progress. At the end of the day, the key idea is simple but often overlooked. Plastic doesn't disappear. It transforms, it moves, and it accumulates. The bottle you throw away today may not look the same in 10 years, but it will still exist in some form, somewhere in the environment. Understanding this changes how we think about waste. Throwing something away doesn't mean it's gone. It just means it's no longer in your immediate space. The responsibility doesn't end when the item leaves your hand. So the next time you use a piece of plastic, it's worth pausing for a moment and considering its full life cycle. Not in an emotional or dramatic way, but in a practical, realistic sense. Where will it go? How long will it stay there? And is there a way to reduce that impact, even slightly? Because the problem is that plastic isn't inherently bad. The problem is that it was designed to last and we treat it as if it doesn't.